presently in the webinar. Today is our 53rd day of 75 program series that we are organizing under the 75th Azadi Ka Amritsar. And today we have, chosen a topic that is new technology and AML and CFT compliance and environmental, social and governance. These are one of the unique topics which we have chosen apart from our regular topics on GST, income tax and the other compliances law. And we thought, to have some other areas which we members can focus on. And for this topics we have today we have Mr. Abhishek Jaju with us, Abhishek Jaju sir, and Mr. Vivek Mundra. So without much taking a time, I'll just introduce our today's speaker. Mr. Abhishek Jaju is an extensive international professional experience in IFRS, risk management and related regulations. He has also served various leading banks and investment companies in the region and around the world, including Ahli Unit Bank, Kuwait International Bank, Bank of Baroda, Genpact, etc. Mr. Abhishek sir has developed and implemented market risk frameworks, measurement models of IFRS 9 for financial institutions and insurance companies, and he has he has developed, revised and the key policy chartered frameworks for ABK as a part of overall corporate governance framework, including board committee of charters, CG policies, disclosure policies, remuneration policies, conflicts of interest and various others. And he has been felicitated individually or in a company owned by him in various fora. Some of the felicitation given to the company includes Global Youth Icon of Year 21-22 from Economic Times, felicitation by Dubai Economy for the service provided, awarded in the category Excellence in Finance Companies during Finext Conference 2020, nominated for the Global Young Leader Awards 2022, APAC Entrepreneur of the Year, the unique product ADPT won the Best Actuarial and IFRS 17 Solutions for 2022 in the Insure Tech Conference held in Dubai in the beginning of 2022. And I think मैं पढ़ूंगा तो पूरा सेशन इसमें लग जाएगा. And Abhishek sir has so vast knowledge in this compliances related to anti-money laundering. I would also like to introduce our second speaker of today's session, Mr. Vivek Mundra sir. He is Masters of Business Administration from XIMB India. He is a BTech. He has also done his BTech from India only. Vivek sir has been trusted advisor with over 12 years of experience in strategy consulting, sustainability, corporate finance, business transformations, and program management across industries like public sector, financial services, oil and gas, family groups within Middle East. And he has an experience of more than 10 years in the investment strategies for leading entities. He has built strategies for holding company creations, monetization of real estate assets, futuristic transportation needs, payment platforms, and sustainability investment for leading government entities. He has developed the strategy for post-COVID era, go-to-market strategy for real estate, advertising, and transportation services. He has led the ESG reporting for over 35 industries for a leading credit bureau. He has an experience in leading the integrated reporting for many listed entities globally. Sir, we are fortunate, very fortunate enough to have both of you as a panelist over here. So now, without wasting much of our time, I would like Abhishek sir to please start his deliberation.
Thank you so much. First of all, obviously, I would like to thank all the working member committee for arranging such a fantastic forum for us also to present, and obviously for the members to gain the knowledge. So congratulations on that, Mr. Akash, you and your team. As you have mentioned that over the years, we have gained experience as part of running this firm, AJMS Global, which is now present in 11 countries. As individually and as a team, we have gained a lot of experience, especially on the emerging technologies that has come into the foray in the compliance field. So as part of today's session, how we have divided the session is that approximately 40-45 minutes, we will take you through the concepts, the case studies, the key, just a second. Yeah. Everybody can see the screen, right? It's visible.
Yeah, right.
So we will discuss about automation and compliance. What are the new technology, the opportunity and challenges it brings along with it, the key benefits, especially with regards to the case studies which we are talking about from the AML compliance from financial sector, as well as from designated non business professions, including our own profession of auditors as a responsible gatekeeper within the entire financial system which we work with. So as part of that, today's session becomes quite critical and important, because as you all are aware that the regulations globally have increased multifold, and especially after the global financial crisis, we have seen a lot of regulations coming not only in India, but across the world. One of the most important thing where these regulations are focused is to strengthen the internal control processes and reporting to their regulators and supervisory bodies. Now, over the years, you would have seen that these regulations have been interpreted, and the cost of implementing this has been huge. The compliance cost has been increasing, the regulatory cost has been increasing, be it from the GST tax, other point of view, as well as AML, which has also become quite critical from our country perspective, which is India, right? The financial sector has to be protected by these perpetrators who may use our financial system to launder funds or use the platform to finance certain activities which are not in line with the requirements of the government, as well as we as a sovereign country. This is very important for us to focus on. So over the last 2 years, you would have also seen that post COVID-19, there's a big transformation we are seeing, that a lot of organizations, be it large corporates, financial sector, have become digitally more active. Earlier, it was kind of a slow jog, but now it has turned into a full sprint. You can see and there has been a lot of surveys, but one of the most important thing which is coming out of the surveys is that the digital transformation is one of the most strategic initiatives, in fact, for majority of the listed entities in India, as well as majority of the corporates and large organizations also. So this, with that thing in mind, I would like to start that how with this digitally evolved economy, we as as organizations have to be actively involved in the transformation of how we work today, and put those controls which are important as part of managing and ensuring compliances within our organization or for our clients also. So that's the purpose of our session today. Now, if you see here, one of the most important thing which we all know today, that the world is interconnected. The global financial crisis was privy to all, right? And after that, so many regulations came up. One of the most important and the tedious task of interpretation of these regulations and then implementation. There's a huge challenge on the system data, especially if you have a legacy system. The data is not updated, and this massive volume of data which is required to enforce the new regulation is not there, which means that the cost of compliance or managing those parts becomes quite expensive. One of the major challenges of compliance we always see fundamentally is the data problems. Now, you may, sometimes it may be a simple reporting activity, or sometimes it can be an operation nightmare. It really depends on how your organization maturity matrix is in terms of your agility to develop or to adapt new systems, technologies, and at the same time run to make sure that the scale or the scalability of your organization is commensurate to the size and complexity of the systems which you're using. For example, there has been globally, you would have heard billions of dollars of fines which has been given for non-compliances and SLA breaches, especially in the area of AML. India is in India, you would have also heard a lot of banks who have also not been able to comply with it. And apart from financial sector, there has been a lot of lack of compliance in DNFBP sector, which is designated non-business and profession, where audit and accounting is one of the professions where we as gatekeepers have to ensure these things are there. Now, when you look at the fines and you look at the reason of the fines, it is not that majority of the time it will not be that there is something which has been done on purpose. It is something where you see that the data quality is not captured, the information that is required to comply with the new regulation has not been captured, the information to confirm whether the client risk assessment is high, medium or low has not been captured. So with this poor quality of data and with this enhanced requirement, one of the major things which has come up in compliance is to focus on automation of the system which currently is there. Now, Aadhaar card linkage with all our bank account is one such initiative, right? We all know that how well it has been executed, how well it has been implemented, and how smooth it is being there. There are a lot of third-party service providers who may come in, who may support the clientele, but this is something which helps you to start capturing the basic data of the information which is required for the KYC process and hence the AML. So one thing before I go to the next slide, I would always focus on is the data in terms of the volume, in terms of the diversification of the data, and in terms of the readiness of the information that needs to be collected is the most important challenge today post-pandemic, given that all these data can be captured digitally. The information can throw to your AI algorithm platforms certain information through which you can detect and in advance protect the entire financial structure. So with that thing in mind, these are things which are very critical and important as part of automation. So this is why it is required. Now, the second slide focuses on what are the key application of these new technologies. Now, we all have heard about certain technologies, AI, which is artificial intelligence. We are hearing about it, but what exactly it does, how it has to be implemented, and how there are use case studies, especially with regards to financial sector and with regards to AML in particular. So one of the things which is very important is that the technology which you adopt or the platform which you adopt for conducting AI, like Python is one of the good platforms where AI is driven, strongly. It is very important that the AI should be able to do 4 key steps before you move forward. The purpose and the reason of why you need to use AI. So if you have a large volume of data which is unstructured and which is qualitative in nature, your AI can be an engine which will help you identify and simplify these data into structured and give you data points which are more clear and helps you in your decision making process. Second is it helps you form and simplify the non-linear patterns in your large data, helps you improve the accuracy obviously over time after all the data is collected and the run, the back testing and other things, and simplify. So basically the world today is 80% of the data of the world has been collected in the last 2 years, as you say. Data has become the next, I would say, the oil of the world. Okay, how oil used to be valued earlier, today in the last 2 to 3 years you will see data is something which has become value. You would have seen that a lot of fintechs comes out, they see transactional data, their valuations are based on that. Traditional chartered accountant and valuation experts will do it on the basis of DCFs and other methodologies, but when you look at their information and data, they value their firms on the basis of what data is there and what is the potential of making that data, monetizing that data is where the valuation game comes. So data is becoming very important, that how you serve the client and how you collect the time. Now, having said that, some of the new technologies which has come and which has been adopted even at India level and globally is obviously the blockchain technology. Now that technology is something which is very important. That is the base where the trusted parties can trust each other and share the information which is under the distributed ledger technology. That is where, if you see the buzzwords of cryptos and others, they are all on any particular blockchain platform which is there. And one of the major things of all these transactions, when the blocks are created, the transaction cannot be changed. It is something which only a new block will be formed if you form another level of transaction. So this means that the record, time, date, stamp, and the audit trail of each transaction on this particular, whether private or public blockchain, will always be there. There has been many case studies, especially if you look at studies coming out of US also, or here where I come from in UAE, where I have my own practice. In UAE, you see that the mortgage department has adopted blockchain as a very good platform, which is public private ledger, where the information with regards to the data is shared with the private party with the private key, and they are able to identify and authenticate if the buyer and seller wants to deal. The information is there on the platform, publicly available, based on the information hash which is available. So this is very important as part of your overall. But coming to digital identity, I think Aadhaar card, the information which we discussed, the verification on a real-time basis, if you go and open an account, or sometimes even at the transaction level, these database helps you to identify and authenticate. So India is already well advanced. There are many economies where this nationalized level information is not there. One such country I would say is our neighboring country, Nepal, which is now going into a very similar model. So there is no government data which has been currently adopted. Then focusing on another thing is natural language processing. So one of the major evolutions we have seen, especially with regards to technology, has been NLP, which helps the AI to extract information from various documents and interpret it. As I was mentioning, the AI decision-making process enhances, it helps you enhance the entire qualitative data. So this is a very good case study. I'll show you certain case studies, how it has helped even in the legal profession as part of their interpretation on the cases or the judgments which has been passed on similar cases, helps you collate those informations together. So it is all about the algorithm which you build and how the NLP, or how strong the NLP is. One use such case study is if you pick up a simple trade license or a commercial registration in India. There are a lot of softwares or solutions which are OCR driven, and they are able to capture those information and populate into the system also without the intervention of any potential manual. Then we look at fuzzy logic, especially if my colleagues here would be familiar with sanction screening, which is also becoming a very critical part globally and in India also. You should not deal with any individual which is on the sanction list of Indian authorities or global authorities like OFAC, EU, UKHMT, and others. So as part of that, it is very important that your system should be upgraded with those techniques on how to identify potential perpetrator, and fuzzy logic is one that technique where it will help you identify one similar name written, but the name is not exact match, but based on the fuzzy logic can match multiple ways. So it is very important for you to adapt and improve your system. These are some solutions which are there, which is already available in the market. Now, what is the purpose of these solutions and how it can implement and help you in your regulatory change management? To successfully deal with your regulatory change management, all of you have to combine this content from thousands of regulatory documents, right? And this thousands of regulatory document requires adjustments, which can call for cooperation between different area of businesses within your organization. Because maybe let's pick up GST. Within GST, there are industry experts also, right? So many documentation, so many clarifications, so many industrial information would be there. And different expertise within your organization as a chartered accounting firm will be there, or within a industry, you may have certain expertise, but different businesses would be involved. So this is very important that a cooperation is required for this adjustment. Now, in this scenario, when regulations are updated as and when, there is a chain of set of reaction which has to be followed. That what is the impact when is the impact, when you have to implement all these information. Now, with the technique of NLP and the intelligent process automation. So NLP, as I explained, was natural language processing, and intelligent process automations are very valuable in helping you comprehend these documents, and the algorithm would help you analyze and classify the document, extract useful information based on the client category or information which you share, implement product and processes that can be impacted by your regulatory. So for an organization which is, let's say, working in a very financial sector or a non-financial sector, it is very important that if you have those data, NLP will help you analyze, and the AI will throw you a result and give you a clarity that because of the implementation of this regulation, these are the products which may get impacted, or the processes, which is your internal control processes, which may get impacted as part of it. Now it is very important that the clients who are our clients, or the industry which is for whom we are working, we need to be up to date with all the regulatory changes, and hence for that, automation of this process helps you in streamlining the entire process, and reduces potential fines or hefty fines, especially for financial services who are highly regulated, and large corporates who are listed entities, to avoid those hefty fines for non-compliance. For example, in 2020, SEC in US had issued 715 enforcement actions, which was in order, they potentially identify the regulatory implementations was not up to the mark. Second, as part of sanction screening, we were discussing about fuzzy logic. One of the most important things, even Forbes has reported that the false positive of identifying whether the customer is part of sanction or not sanction is almost above 90%. That's too high a rate, right? Because if you are dealing with 100,000 or millions of customers and your false positive rate is 90%, it becomes a tedious task for your compliance team to review each customer case and then clear the case for further transaction, depending on the requirement which the customer has. So this is something which has really put a huge pressure on the legacy compliance processes with the current systems which we have. So a lot of large banks, for example, are experiencing false positive in their compliance systems at a very high alarming rate also. So there is a lot of complaints, which especially when you do transaction monitoring, when you are doing those transactions, they need to identify which transactions are in line with the KYC profile of the customer, which transactions seems to be fraudulent, so that they do avoid these potential threats, or make sure that the information is shared properly to the customer. So each of these false alarms has to be reviewed by these compliance officer, which means that if in a day the compliance officer would always have 9 hours maximum to devote, right? So as part of that, what happens is it becomes inefficient, and a lot of human error can be possible. So this is second thing which is important as part of the overall presentation, what we are trying to say. Artificial intelligence and machine learning, especially for identification and verification of customers through biometric, through machine learning or liveliness detection techniques, are now prevalent across the region. Micro expression analysis, anti-spoofing, fake image detection. Sometimes when digital onboarding, you are doing digital onboarding for a bank to open an account, people are not coming and putting their own, selfie. It is the photo which they put, and the systems are able to define whether the person himself has done the work, or the fake image has been used to attribute and conduct a human face attribution analysis. Another thing is automated data reporting, which is also very important, and reporting has become quite critical. And this is where the use of AI and machine learning can be quite some of the technologies, like for example, digital is non-face-to-face, so anybody can open account, do transaction once they verify. Automatic updating of customer information is also very important, because they are directly connected, as in when the information gets updated, it gets information. India as an economy, obviously there is a lot of population who still remain unbanked or underbanked, I would say. And through onboarding process, which is digitally, it saves a lot of cost and time for banks and doesn't need have the requirement of opening branches. So that is something which is also very critical and important. Focusing on our other part, which is second part is the OCR, which is linked with the NLP also. It helps you extract information on a timely basis based on the criteria and definition which you define, making sure that more efficient matching and search for additional data is done. So those meticulous or those repeated tasks which can be easily automated saves a lot of time and effort, and your team and your company would only focus on the analysis rather than doing the data massaging, or how would we say, data cleaning part. So distributed ledger technology again works on blockchain platform. One of the greatest use case studies which we have seen is on the remittance business, especially in India corridor, where a lot of banks have come on this blockchain platform and are processing transactions within minutes on the basis of the remittance. One such example globally I can give is Ripple, which is actually connecting banks and settling the payments in minutes between the banks through their API platform and through their blockchain, because the authentication and the trust is much higher. Certain AML controls and the opportunity and the channels. So risk assessment is something which is, the opportunities that through technology you can enhance the identification and effective implementation of the controls for risk, for identifying which are high risk customers, which are low risk customers. And with regards to the current framework, if you see the challenges, automation is good, but the level of information which is available is limited, and human judgment may or may not vary. See, at the end of the day, the machine learning would depend on the historical data, and if the historical data of the risk assessment is not there, it takes time for the AI to function. So we need to focus on that. Digital identity verification, again, we are talking about the advantages or the opportunities which are there. It will help you reduce the cost of onboarding a customer, which can be much higher. Even the customer coming on the platform and not opening the account, it also reducing the human error and promoting financial inclusion. Focusing on the challenges, there are many: identity theft, fraud, limitation of reliable independent verification database. Transaction monitoring and record retention also becomes very good case study, especially on the AML controls and the leverage of these technologies. There's a huge opportunity of saving the cost and enhancing the analysis with regards to transaction data of customers, and making sure that you are able to report to the authorities if at all there is any threat or potential suspicion on certain transactions. The legacy systems has one drawback, that they are not able to integrate, they are not able to upgrade themselves to come out with solutions which are AI driven, which helps you do decision making process. So it is very important that you invest on technologies going forward, which are low code based platform, or which are based on platform which are new technology, so that you are working and you are enhancing your entire process with regards to that. So we'll just take you through one of such processes for a financial institution, and even DNFBP, like here in UAE or in the Middle East or in if you look at EU, Singapore, all the chartered accountants have to do a sanction screening on the corporate which they onboard, all the individuals or the UBOs of the corporate which they are onboarding as a customer. It is a mandatory requirement to see whether they are onboarding anybody who is part of sanction or adverse media or PEP list. It is very critical and important. Similar to that, there is a very strong process which financial sector follows, as well as DNFBP, what we call designated non-business and professionals, also follows the same. So one such thing is that the customer onboarding and the sanction screening should be automated in such a way, that it becomes quite, just a second, yeah. So natural language processing, because the customer data, license, information which has to be extracted through OCR, fuzzy matching tools also allow for more effective reduction. Focusing on the challenges which are there, one of the major thing is that if it is accurate and automated information filling information, then the sanction screening process is conducted directly through the NLP process and fuzzy logic match tools which we have brought, and they identify whether the individual is sanctioned PEP or in adverse media, and based on that reduce the false positive and negative. Now, risk assessment also, because you are collecting all the information, especially from the customer behavior perspective, AML behavior perspective, customers' geographies, the business which they want to conduct, distribution channel, the services, how they plan to take, the customer products, which customers wants, which kind of products with the banks to work with. All these informations are collected automatically through the digital onboarding process, and the risk assessment is also automated. Now, there was a survey, and it is important for you to also know that it is not only banks which uses it. There are many other people apart from multinational financial institution which comprise 42%. The rest 58% is divided between big tech like Amazon and Apple Pay. You can see everybody has their own payment system, Paytm, all these internet-based firms, retail and commercial bank. These are organizations which are using now the new technology and are adapting it to make sure that the level of information and the level of data which needs to be collected for the purpose of making a clear judgment is also there. Moving ahead, benefits of the new technology. I think this is the survey result with regards to the benefits of the new technology and how it can help you implement a robust compliance system. The first is the AML CFT effectiveness, which is quite critical and important. It helps you comply with the AML regulations. It helps you comply with the PMLA Act of India. So it is very important that the new technology should be leveraged. It is no longer a choice for us to avoid that. It is always we can delay it, but it is something we have to adopt, especially the sanction screening system. Like we as EGMS have developed a solution which is used by not only financial sector and DNFBP like auditors, but also by regulators in the region where we work. Present in 11 countries, including India, from our Jaipur office and Chennai and Trivandrum. These are 3 offices where we are present. And we have been working with a lot of our clients also, especially in reducing their AML CFT risk. And that's where we would be able to support the entire fraternity if there is any requirement in terms of AML CFT effectiveness, because this is becoming very critical and the new technology is something which has to be looked into. Benefits of new technology, as I mentioned, effective regulatory change management. This is the most important because thousands of documents are coming, and these documents and regulatory changes requires adjustment, coordination between department, coordination between different people, different organization, different expertise, and with NLP as well as smart identification system. You would be able to classify, extract those useful information, classify the client information in the requirement, and have a strong method. Sorry. Yeah. So coming to the reducing false positive, as I explained you the sanction screening process. So reducing the false positive is directly linked to it. So there are, as I was mentioning earlier, there were certain cases which has been identified by Forbes that the high rate was almost around, to a tune of 90%, which has reduced. So like, for example, the technology which we leverage, especially for DigiComply, our subsidiary, which focuses on coming out with sanction screening, the false positive rate is less than 15% as compared to the industry average of 35-40, and some systems take it to 90%. So it is important for you to identify such systems which helps you enhance your business. At the same time, helps you also to reduce the next point, which is fraud prevention and AML, and detect any potential threat to your organization through your clients, through your process, through the transactions which are done. So those things are very, very critical and important, and hence we recommend that it has to be dealt in terms of the information that is. Now, fraud prevention and identifying of the anomaly will depend on the data which you collect, and that is the most important task as part of this. If you expose large data to ML tools and statistical methods, normal patterns in a data can be learned. So what we are trying to say is that the ML, which is machine learning, and AI, which is artificial intelligence, are effective if you have a robotic process automation. That automation helps you start capturing the data in some form, and that form will help you, your machine learning technique or the tool, to analyze and come out with certain criteria and information which will help your AI to make a decision and identify if they have idea, is there anything which is inconsistent event or anomaly in detection, or is an isolate abnormal behavior. The moment they do any one of these three, they flag those events and come back to you saying, please review the same. Now, this anomaly detection algorithm will always help you to identify and react or prepare yourself for these unusual data points in multiple scenarios. For example, a bank security system can employ these things to identify if the customers who they are dealing may have been involved in a fraudulent transaction, or his card has been, or his identity has been stolen, and fraudulent transactions are happening from his account. So this is another thing which is also very important for the benefits with regards to new technology. Another thing which you see here is human error mitigation, which is obviously would always be there. If I give you 1 million line items of data to review, there would be human errors, there would be missings, which we do. But machine learning and AI tools help you identify and remove this human error because it is run by the algorithm, and it helps you implement those important aspects of controls to make sure that the human errors, which are costing actually billions for people. For example, Citigroup's credit department employee, as you can see in the example which we are saying, almost got 1 billion to a client or a lender. Now, this information is very critical, because what happens is any regulations you draw, any regulation you print, the compliance officer has to track, manage, and analyze these data and make sure that the customer and the operational activities are happening at the large part. But the volume of this information raises several opportunities for confusion, and hence this is advisable that it should be easy and can give easy rise to human error. So it is advisable to use the AL, MI, and ML technique with regards to finding of the blind spots, reasonable errors, and other perspectives that humans may not necessarily pick up. Moving ahead, some of the case studies, I think this is very important, and now I'm going into the last part of my segment. Post that, would be more than happy to take questions from the participants at all and take this forward. The first is legal and regulatory management. I was telling that how NLP has supported and machine learning has supported in legal document extraction. And the case study which we are talking about is for one of the European banks. So what exactly it was, that there were legal documents which were there and which needed to be transformed into a set of rule which can be implemented for the bank system. Now, how it was done was, these documents, which used to go into hundreds and thousands of pages, were converted into rules and events. That was their plan. And this should be implemented as part of bank's compliance process, and there should be responsibility metrics which should be there. The program was successfully conducted and completed through NLP and machine learning techniques. And this entire process, which was earlier manual, was able to automate 80 to 90% of the information, especially on data collection and data extraction, to prepare such rules and come out with the compliance. Focusing on the trading and research and business aligned risk and control, one of the major things which is there is analysis of the corporate bonds. Now, again, analysis of the corporate bonds which has historical data. And this historical transactional data will help your machine learning to come out with a solution which is help your AI to make a decision-making process based on what the trend is, based on the technical analysis. So the how the extraction of this scheme transactional data and the validation of the terms and condition can be done, which then has to be input into the terms and condition database of that particular bank, so that the front office trading team, which was using and relying on these terms and condition, can use the data as part of their trading, research, and specific. Now, this is very common, that collection of the data through multiple platforms were being done on this particular thing, and NLP came and simplified those informations and gave a report which was precise to the requirement of the bank, and was able to report technical decision-making process with regards to the bank's process. Coming into more regulatory framework and AML KYC framework, one of the most important things which you see here is providing AML and KYC analysis with regards to client onboarding process. In this, what we can see is that the purpose of conducting this was that whether the machine learning techniques or the AI techniques can be used to help in the analysis for the client onboarding process. As part of that, segments and clusters and group of entities, which was created based on the rules applied for suspicious activity report, which is one kind of report where you need to report to the authorities within your organization, and if this is something which is potentially reportable to the authorities, you should report that. So entities were clustered, and these clusters were validated through machine learning. So this was how the data was clustered, and clustering of the data is one of the major techniques to identify a group of data together and then do a risk assessment on the entire process of that particular data. So for example, the progress, if you see 40-50% has been automated, and there are multiple processes which are still going on. So still this work is in progress. You are not ideally expected to automate the entire process, because what happens is currently the level of data information and the historical data is not to the tune that you can rely completely on that. There is an error rate by AI also, because the information, the input, what comes in, the output goes out. So if it is garbage in, garbage out. This is very important for everyone to understand, that currently the objective is not to automate the things 100%, but do it over a period of time. Have a plan, have a strategy of your digitalization, so that helps you cover that part. Case study 4, which is on investment compliance. Now, investment company, maybe you are working with a lot of clients, maybe you have wealth management, private banking clients. The purpose was how we can do the document analysis, and what are the rules which we can extract from these large chunks of databases of the papers, to ensure that we are able to comply, and we come out with a solution where it is not mere tick in the box, but it is something where we are able to comply on the investment compliance. So how it was planned to be achieved? The planning was that use the NLP techniques so that we can extract the rules from all these mutual fund documents. We know the structure, the way they structure it, so information was getting captured, and to remove any limited sets of rules which were present in the document. So that once you have these rules, when you present it to the customer is very clear that how the agreements are shaped up, these rules are present in the agreement, and this ensures that whatever product you sell them, it is in line with the investment compliance. It is still in progress, again 40-50% which is there, but the most important thing, they have leveraged the new techniques and technology. Another thing, the next case study is on limits management and trading. In limits management and trading, I think a lot of people are familiar how the forex, commodity markets, stock markets, and people who deal in spot futures, options are very clear for a lot of people. So what was the case study or the case in point? That they were extracting trading rules from number of overlapping rules in the multi-trading systems. So a lot of global brokerage house, regional brokerage, and India level brokerage house provide trading systems which are multiple trading asset system. So the problem statement for this company was, this brokerage house was that to identify, and this particular bank to help them identify those rules and come out with these controls which will help them be in compliance with the regulation. Now, when we look at this, they looked at all machine learning techniques because it depends on the historical data also. It depends on the rules which have been changing or which are critical for the current, and it has to be up to date. So earlier, the rules were implemented in large batches, but no or very little attention was being given for the overlaps. But now, because the rule have become so high, that it has created a significant burden. So it is very important to identify for multi-trading systems or assets which you're trading, what are the key rules that needs to comply, and wherever there is overlapping over and above, higher of the two was being selected as part of this. Another thing is trade surveillance and control. So segmentation of the trader surveillance alert. This is also another investment banking topic and other things which are also there. As part of this, number of alerts of manipulation can be generated. Ethical practices at hedge fund or tier 1 hedge fund were identified. So it is very important that how or what technique was helping them to make sure that the trades which were executed by certain entities which are using the US capital markets firms platform is able to give the context in which these are structured and unstructured data. So as to reduce the false positive, be it on your transaction monitoring system or be it on your sanctions screening system. So as part of that, the entire process has been implemented and more than 50% of the process has been successfully conducted. Now, these are very wide range of examples and case applicability of the technology which we have discussed. Now, to summarize, I think it is very important to recapitulate the part which we had focused, that digital transformation was already under the way, and with COVID-19, it is now only accelerating. More than 82% of the CEOs in recent survey have strategically said that digital transformation is the most important thing for them. The new technologies which we are talking about will help you upgrade the risk and compliance system commensurate to the digital transformation which you're doing. So it is important that you want to grow your business digitally, which is digital first, but leverage these techniques to help you comply with the regulation. One of the major challenges of implementing is the lack of data or historical data, or the lack of systems which are agile, which can be updated and which can be implemented in a quick turnaround time. So that is something a lot of organization faces challenge, and this is where the fines and the non-compliance issues comes up. So there are RegTech solutions which can, help you implement. As I mentioned, AGMS also has its own RegTech solution, and many financial institutions work with us also directly, indirectly, in terms of implementation of their common challenges, in terms of reducing their systematic risk, in terms of enhancing the entire process in front of their regulator. There are countless potential opportunities and benefits today we discussed, especially on the automation of the data, collection of the data, NLP, which is extraction of the data, and focusing on how the historical data can give us a perspective on what the future lies. With that, I think I have taken more than 45-50 minutes to conclude my session. In the last 10 minutes, I have kept the session with regards to the question and answers. So happy to answer any questions if you have. And before my colleague Vivek will take forward the discussion.
Vivek sir, are you there?
Yeah, Vivek is here.
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah.
any questions from the participants or any suggestions, any questions they have?
Any participant, if you want to ask any questions, can raise his hand. I think Vivek sir, you please continue with the session.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Akash. Yeah, Vivek.
Yeah, I'll share. Trust my screen is visible.
Yeah, it's visible.
Okay, perfect. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Akash, and thank you, the regional chapter, the Central Council, for having me here. Today, we are going to discuss on a topic which is probably the most buzzword across the globe: environmental, social, and governance, ESG. This has been there since long. It's just the name have changed over the ages. And now we are standing at a cusp where this has probably become more of a regulatory issue, and every organization across the globe is trying to think, what can we do for ESG? Again, similar to what I have done, I've probably broken into 4 key segments. To start off with, just an overview and introduction of ESG, how it has evolved over the time and what exactly where it stands today. Global development, especially in terms of the regulatory aspects, the regulators, what has been their stance globally. Coming to India, what is Indian government stance? What is in it for the organizations? What they need to prepare themselves for? And finally, how we as AGMs believe should be the approach, and what are the tools and technologies which is available, which you can readily take to prepare yourself for the overall ESG push. To start off with, right, ESG is something which all we have heard: environmental, social, and governance, 3 various different topics. There are many people who think ESG is nothing but just a mix of CSR activities, which we have been doing in the past always. But no, ESG is not just CSR, it is much more thing beyond it. And it clearly signifies the 3 key pillars which an organization needs to look into. Starting from the environmental, which addresses how your organization works, ensuring there is no impact on the environment, right? So starting from your greenhouse emission gas to waste management, everything is being captured here, and how you as an organization is ensuring that you are taking care of the environment in which you work. The second is the society at large, not just the external society, but internal, which is more towards your workforce. They have the necessarily diversification, the diversified workforce, employee happiness. Are you taking care of them? The training and facilities which you are providing to your employees, their health and well-being. And finally, the governance aspect, which is more towards the board, is whether you have the necessary government and the internal controls to run the organization. That's prima facie ESG, but it has been taken a huge stance over the last probably couple of years. Just very simple statistics is almost every CFO across the globe is now thinking and putting ESG as the core agenda of their board and their whole finance transformation. So that just goes on to shows how important this thing is. Purely in terms of investments, multiple M&A activities are going on, and again, purely focusing on what is your ESG stance. Some history, and as I said, it started somewhere back, probably 3 decades, 4 decades back, with environmental health and safety, which predominantly looked into how I'm going to look into the health and safety of my organization, of my employee, and what am I doing from the environmental perspective. Slowly, it moved more beyond that and more towards an environmental sustainability, ensuring ensuring that you leave the environment for the future to come, right? The whole aspect has become the kind of a limited resources which we have in terms of the water and the natural resources. We don't want to use that and keep for our future generation. And that's where the whole thought process evolved, is that are we really using it judicially, and are we keeping something for our future or not? That slowly evolved into CSR, into where what am I doing for the society, how I am supporting the low cost of the society. You are having profit, but is that something which you are using to beneficially the other part of the society? And that's where the CSR aspects came into picture, which eventually became mandated in India as well, right? Almost big organizations needs to spend some of their funds for CSR. And then all these probably got merged together, and over the last decade or so, the word ESG became predominant, is where it takes an holistic view of everything and encapsulate that into an overall umbrella. Is what are you doing for your environment, what are you doing for society, and what controls or governance levels you have to run the organization in a complete transparent manner for all these stakeholders. And that's where it comes in. What are those topics which one generally needs to look into? So right from environment, as I said, it's from an environment management, which from your greenhouse emissions, how much is my power bill, utility bill, am I using it judicially? And that's why we have this whole concept of smart lightings being used across the buildings, right? Then comes the energy management, which is again linked to that. Water and wastewater management, am I using that judicially or not? The waste and hazardous material, very, very important for the manufacturing and healthcare facility and the oil and mining. How are they using that and ensuring it is not losing my environment? And finally, the economical impacts and the biodiversity diversity in terms of the animals and water animals. Social, the starting from the employees, the workforce training. Are we providing adequate training to our staff, ensuring their safety and employee health being, which always has been the case. If you remember, EHS, environmental health and safety, which we spoke about in the last slide, has always been there, but now it has been packaged into the social arm of ESG. The diversity and inclusion, again, very, very important. Your male versus female ratio, board members, the staff, right? How much you are diversified. And that's not just for organization of the everywhere, be it education institute, be it training, be it manufacturing. Everyone is thinking about ensuring have a proper and healthy diversification. Human rights and community relations, right? That's another thing, whether you are giving that necessarily human rights. There's so much thing which is happening probably across the globe. If you might have read in Africa as well, right? Especially the child rights and all. So those all things are being captured into this ESG parameter. Finally, from your customer and vendor perspective, the customer privacy and data security. Again, one of the biggest issues, right? Data security, the data breaches which is happening. So how are you ensuring you are keeping your customer data safe and private and not being breached across? And finally, the product which you are selling as an organization, the quality and safety of that, which starts from your responsible sourcing of your procurement to the whole cycle and how you are selling to the customer. So in a way, the complete package of society, ensuring your products, your customers, your vendors, and your employees. And finally, the governance, which starts from the top, which is the board itself, whether they are obviously from the non-independent directors to comes to the diversity of the board, again, from male versus female, whether you have a women board member or not, again, which is one of the mandatory from SEBI for the listed organizations, internal controls and audit, and then the compensation and the rights, the business ethics, the whistleblower policy, and all those stuff. So in a nutshell, it is taking care of the whole organization in a holistic way and seeing whether the organization is running in a transparent manner and providing all the details to its stakeholders whether it's an internal or external. How can ESG support an organization to achieve a competitive advantage? Right. So one of the first and foremost thing which comes in terms of a reputation. So if your organization is transparent, the reputation comes by default. Right. So if you are working in a mining field, in a mining or a manufacturing organization, and you have the whole sourcing of your, let's say you're doing a mining, that's complete sourcing is being transparent on how you're doing it, to who are the resources being used, it gives much more comfort to your customers, to your vendors, to your employees, and to your most importantly, your shareholders, right? That brings a reputation to the organization that you are an organization of repute and really accomplish your business objectives as a result. Risk reduction, obviously ensuring you immediately identify all your immediate and long-term risk. When you do the whole ESG analysis, you identify all those risks which is involved in running the business. And that makes it much easier. If you've identified, the mitigation would eventually come across with that. Hello. Sorry. Am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible.
Yeah. Opportunity management. Obviously, with all this, the opportunity starts flowing. The unmet need of the market, especially in terms of the product services, automatically starts coming, right? Once you become transparent to your all shareholders, automatically the opportunity starts flowing in and you grow business and make money. And finally, the culture and intrinsic value, which helps you to retain and attract those important, which is your employees, the talent which is required. And that purpose-driven workforce is being developed in the organization, which goes for a much, much longer duration. So that's the whole agenda of an organization should be, right? It's all agile, and we need to think about long-term. We just cannot think about short-term and do the business. So to have that long-term vision, ESG is where the starting point is to provide you that complete perspective. Moving ahead, how globally it has taken shape, what has been the stance, what are the reporting standards, various things, right? So first and foremost, to start off with, what is that driver which has really given this kind of a footage to ESG? And that's the investors pool. Over almost 2,500 investment management firms, more than 100 trillion of asset worth is being integrated to ESG factors. There are multiple new funds coming, which is focused purely on ESG, which is like clean energy, clean water, new mode of smart transportations. And these are all backed by the United Nations backed principles, right? So the investment is flowing in this area, and it's across, we know wherever the investment flows, that the buzzword, and that's where the organizations want to work towards. So the investors are really focused on that. Very few example, insurance companies, currently reinsurance companies, insurance companies work very hand in hand with reinsurance companies, right? The biggest of the reinsurance companies have clearly said, their insurance companies is that, look, if you are creating with ESG products, we'll be providing you more incentives. And that's where the products are moving towards, is your investors, your shareholders are thinking about that. Credit rating agencies, any kind of a lending, you need to go to a credit rating agency. The credit rating agency is looking for your ESG profile. What are you doing on ESG? What is your ESG score? And that directly impacts your credit rating, which eventually helps you to get that required funding or attract any of the investor. So again, that's another one of the key stakeholder which looks for your ESG score. The stock exchanges, right? There are multiple stock exchanges which has come, which is looking into sustainability and ESG. And they have clearly said the commitment that more and more ESG related linked organizations needs to get listed. And finally, the most important, the regulators, which we'll talk in detail later, is the regulators. Obviously, all these are coming through the regulator, is that the regulator have taken a clear stance, is that you need to report your ESG. You might have already seen, right? Our Prime Minister have already said by 2070, India will be net zero. How we are going to do that, right? There are multiple policies and legislations which is coming across, which is supporting the organization, who is supporting the environment instance, right? And that's will all being culminated through the regulator, is that mandatory requirement for the organizations. is that you need to report on what you are doing on this. And that's the only way where organization would be able to take that call, is that, look, I need not just a reporting requirement, I need to do something on that as well. The three key mainstreams which has been there: materiality. What is that important for your organization? How is this going to influence your investor risk and returns? And that's the starting point to understand what is material for you as an organization. Then going to be transparent, more transparent, how your investor funds is being used, how your customers' funds are being used, how you are using the procurement. That transparency, if you have that whole value chain, automatically your reporting becomes easy. And finally, the regulations on what is regulatory requirement and whether you are following that and ensuring all those are being met. Again, very simple from an ESG investing perspective. Yes, an organization which is more transparent, have clear governance in terms of ethical governance, low carbon emissions, will be able to secure those investments compared to other organization which is trying to hide something or not being transparent to its investors, right? As we mentioned earlier, almost more than $3 trillion of asset is being managed under those funds, which is looking to invest and go for those companies which is ESG focus. And that is just a statistics that is going to hit over 50 trillion asset in probably next 2 to 3 years, which is an astronomical number. And that just shows how the overall investor pool or focus is moving towards this. So where do we start from, right? From an ESG reporting perspective, like we have those IFRS reporting, the accounting boards and all, but for sustainability or ESG, there are multiple. It's not one size fit all kind of a thing. There are multiple boards and regulators and things have come up. So you need to find what is best for you. The first and foremost starting point is the UN SDG goals. Myself being from Dubai, everyone might have already heard about Expo Dubai, which happened this year, right? That was the key focus of that whole Expo Dubai, is the Sustainable Development Goals. So there are 17 SDGs or Sustainable Development Goals, which has been clearly highlighted from them, which starts from obviously very basic human needs to from a poverty or hunger, going towards more action towards the climate action or the life on the cloud on water, and finally the justice and strong institutions and the workforce thing. Right, so it encompasses almost everything which as an organization or as a human you need. So from the basic needs to growing towards the complete environment, and encapsulates everything within those 17 goals. And you can pick up what is important for you as an organization and then start working on that and seeing how am I working or supporting this particular goal. As we mentioned about the reporting standards, right? Again, it's not a one size fit all like an IFRS or an ISB standards where you can see everything. So there are multiple and each has got their different versions and different perspectives. The most common one is GRI, Global Reporting Initiatives, which is more or less assigned with the SDG goals, clearly highlighting under each goals what are the things which you need, which you as an organization need to look into, how you should work about that, what are the KPIs which you need to follow, what are the initiatives which you need to do, and how you can monitor it. So that's one of the most common one which organizations focus across the globe. Then comes the International Integrated Reporting Council. And that's something which many of the regulators across the globe is now moving towards, is what is that sweet mix between your accounting report and a sustainability report. And that's where the integrated reporting comes into picture, is where you don't now come up with your annual statement or annual financial statement, but you come with your annual integrated report, which encapsulates your financial numbers with your non-financial disclosures related to the sustainability or related to the environment, so that it goes hand in hand and clearly highlights is how ESG is not just non-financial, but also financial parameters as well. Then the second most common reporting standard, which is SASB, Sustainability Accounting Standards Board. This is more predominantly more towards the investor and the cost effectiveness, very much used in the banking and financial services industry, predominantly for that. Then we have the carbon disclosure project. This is again purely from a carbon emissions perspective and very important for those who are into manufacturing and have got huge utility bills to be paid, right? That's where it's very important to track those, and obviously these all carbon emissions are tradable at the end, right? So you know that whole thing. And finally, this is kind of a reporting which will help you to become that net zero. And finally, on the task force on the climate related financial disclosure, TCFD, this is again more towards the BFSI, banking and financial services, which is how are they supporting and regulating and reporting towards the climate related aspects. So these are the 5 standards or boards or regulatory boards, which you can say, which gives a lot of guidance on how to go about creating a report for sustainability based on your industry, based on your requirement, and based on the regulator as well as the country specific. Coming to India, how has been the stance within our country? How it has grown over the past 15 years? Right, starting from, as I said, net zero in 2070, 45% reduction in 2030. There's a lot which has been happening. To be precise, if you are following, last year, UP government came up with the first ever green bond issuance in India, right? The RBI have already clearly said that they are going to come up with a lot of other regulation as well as stands for the green bonds and green issuance of the overall thing, right? So there's a lot of things happening as we speak, not just in obviously in India, but across the region as well. Within MENA region, the regulators have already come up with very stringent requirements from the organizations in terms of especially the governance aspect, and so to India. So how it has grown over the years started way back probably in 2009, where the Ministry of Corporate Affairs came up with the voluntary CSR guidelines almost 13-14 years back. That slowly moved towards the voluntary guidelines on the social, environmental, and economic responsibilities of a business. Again, it was all evolving at that time. It was all, again, voluntary from an organization perspective on what they want to share and how they want to share, not much of a guidelines. Then over that, they made it mandatory for the 100 listed companies to file the first ever report, which they say was a business responsibility report. It was mostly into more from a business responsibility perspective, where you were more informing about what you're doing for society, and it was kind of a mix of your CSR report. Then, under the provisions of the Companies Act, they started focusing on the CSR and its reporting in the annual report, which becomes a mandate. So almost every annual report used to have the segment for what is we are doing for CSR, right? Then slowly it became, SEBI came up with the first time ever the format for the BRR, which is a business responsibility report, and what exactly you need to report, what are the KPIs, how you need to report on in what format. And it was again for the first top 500 market capitalization, obviously the top 500. Then came the integrated reporting. If you remember, we spoke about how eventually sustainability report and annual report are going to merge, where you talk about both financial and non-financial. And that came as a voluntary requirement in 2017. But now, over the last 2 years, and specifically last year, BRSR has taken over BRR, which is Business Responsibility and Sustainability Report. And it is mandatory for top 1,000 companies based on the market capitalization. So it's a mandatory regulatory requirement for these organizations to prepare their business responsibility and sustainability report as per the given guidelines, and ensuring they report the basic requirements which is being asked. So that's whole thing where almost every organization in India is looking, and slowly what we see is over the probably next 2 to 3 years, it will become mandated for almost everyone. Obviously, the listed entities have been doing something, but now it has evolved. But even the unlisted companies, even the SMEs and small companies need to really think on what are they doing on their ESG, and are they really integrating those parameters in their overall business or not. What is this new requirement, BRSR? Something which came in 2021. It actually focuses on more than 500 quantifiable data points, which is huge, right? But then it's all industry specific. So for a particular industry, probably you need to identify what is the data point which is relevant for you. And then are you aligned to those principles? So BRSR have come up with their own 9 principles, which in a nutshell is completely aligned to the Sustainable Development Goals 17 SDGs, which we spoke earlier. It is just a rehash of them more from an Indian context perspective. And then these all needs to be detailed out in outcome-oriented reporting format, which has also been said, clearly emphasizing on those metrics and how you are going to measure and compare them, right? What does that structure of BSR looks like, right? The 3 key segments. The first is a general disclosure, which is mostly about the organization itself, about the entity, what are the services it provides, operation, number of employees, very standard, ensuring all the things is being put across, being transparent from a disclosure perspective, which is generally being done in any management report. Then the management and the process disclosure, again, very common to what has been happening in a management report perspective. But then the third section, which is the most important, is your principle-wise performance disclosure, where you need to mandatorily disclose essential indicators, and your voluntary, you can disclose your leadership indicators as well, which will come across what exactly those are. The 9 principles under which you need to disclose this, which we just spoke about earlier. Principle 1, it's all about how the business should conduct and govern themselves with integrity. So you need to align to adhere to your core governance and integrity of the business, how you are being transparent to all your stakeholders, not just internal like your employees or the board, but even to external like your customers, your vendors, your investors as well. So you need to ensure that is being captured properly. What are you doing on that? What are your processes? What are your KPIs? What are the projects you are driving on that, and how you're going to measure them? Principle 2 should provide goods and service in a manner that is sustainable and safe. That comes more from a procurement. How are you going to provide those goods and service to your customer? Obviously, there's no rampant cheating or something going on with your customers. That comes on how you're approaching your customer. What is the whole approach towards? Are you selling, not mis-selling anything? For example, very common in insurance industry, we have seen in mutual fund industry, right, where there's a concept of mis-selling which comes. So are you ensuring there is proper stringent policies to ensure your brokers or sellers are not doing that? So that whole thing needs to come out very clearly. The third principle in terms of promotion of your well-being of employees, right? So that comes internal. What are you doing for your employees? Whatever the number of employees be, are you ensuring they are happy? Their well-being is being taken care of. So starting from your health and safety requirements, if you're a manufacturing or an oil and gas or a mining firm, to going to a normal services industry, of how you're motivating your employees, right? So here all your HR concept comes, which means are you ensuring they are being integrated within the organization and they are happy? Principle 4, respect the interest of, be responsive to all stakeholders. Now here you need to talk about everyone, right from your vendors, starting from even a smaller thing on when are you paying them, to your customers on how you are selling those, to your employees, obviously, which is well-being, to your investors, what is that disclosure which you are giving to investors? Are you ensuring all the information is being passed on clearly? To your management or the board members on how you are doing your board meetings and even your general meetings. Principle 5 should respect and promote human rights. Again, this is very important for the manufacturing, and we have been talking about the mining industries where there is a lot of potential of child labor, right? So those things, are you ensuring that those things are not being captured, and you are ensuring that you're taking care of the basic human rights, simple like no child labor. Principle 6, business should respect and make efforts to protect and restore the environment. Again, this might go back to your probably basic CSR on planting trees, but then goes to a very small thing like, are you becoming a paperless industry, right? When not printing papers is eventually going and save you that environment, to going to the lightning and smart lightning, right? So what are those initiatives which you have an organization taken to ensure you are restoring the environment in which you work? Principle 7, engaging in influencing public regulatory policy, it is responsible and transparent. So here comes your social media, right? One of the biggest thing which everyone is looking, social media, you go and you tweet or you Instagram or you put it in LinkedIn, what is that in a responsible way? Whatever you are putting across, is that correct, transparent, and have you ensure that whatever information you are going to give is accurate and not just pushing across any WhatsApp messages, which is probably a lie. So we have already seen multiple instances over the past, obviously in our country. So that just goes on to focus that if you are someone of a repute who is responsible for looking after your social media campaigns of an organization, be very, very agile and on what you are posting actually, which is going to the public or which is going to the regulator, ensuring it is transparent and you are reliable and you have already ensured that this is a correct information which is being posted across. Principle 8, inclusive growth and equitable development. Again, very goes back to human rights probably, and the whole inclusive growth, which means it's ensuring all the spectrum, the whole compliance of obviously the male versus female candidates across different genre, different aura, different age. Everyone is being treated equally and they have the equal rights to the development as well. So your learning and development and your whole HR talent acquisition and management comes into picture there, is that you are not bifurcating between your employees irrespective of their caste, creed, or sex. So everyone is equal for you, and how you are as an organization is ensuring everyone goes to the same path and have got the same rights and things to move across beyond within the organization. And finally, are you engaging and providing value to your customers in a responsible manner? Again, a common example which we spoke about in the mutual fund or insurance industry, are you responsible while selling these services or products to customers? Are you really thinking about the customer, or is it just for the sake of selling? So how are you ensuring those policies are being intact, kept in place, and you are working towards that? So these are the major 9 principles which the government have clearly highlighted on which one needs to work towards and showcase their initiatives, showcase their KPIs, and how they monitor and measure it over the whole annual year, which obviously next year you need to report again on what have you done on what you gave last year. Few of the topics which we spoke about onto each of these pillars. From a general business perspective, obviously, what are your principal business activities? What are your markets served, the products, the kind of a customers you have, obviously complete customer segmentation. Exports, how much you're exporting, if you have any imports, what is that you need to do? Your R&D and CapEx investments, very important. What are you doing in that? How are you capitalizing that? The affiliations which you have, the trade and industry, there are so many trade bodies, whether you're associated with any of those wikis or not. Responsible business conduct, there's again a very detailed policy from SEBI, and you need to align yourself with that and how you are actually conducting your business. The specific commitments which you have put yourself. For example, I can say I as an organization wants to reduce my energy bill by 10%. So what are you doing? What is that commitment which you have come across as an organization, and how you're working towards that? And finally, your assessment and evaluation of the ESG policy. So you definitely need to have an ESG policy which needs to be evaluated by an external assessor, saying that this actually captures or encapsulates what you as an organization need to do. So moving from the environmental perspective, so you need to highlight all the environmental impacts, risk, and concern. So if you're a manufacturing setup, or if you're going to set up a new manufacturing firm, have you done the complete environmental impact assessment? How is that going to support the environment, or rather destroy the environment? And what is your concerns on that, and how you're mitigating those risks? Maybe you're putting something in a far land and you have to cut across the tree. So what is that mitigation factor for that? And obviously, have you gone through the whole environmental suite of approvals to get that thing? Because at almost every stage, you will need that environmental impact assessment to get across and get the necessary approvals, even to the last stage of getting to a lender. Energy consumption and intensity, again, very important. And that's where most of the buildings are moving towards the solar panel or smart lighting, right? Is to ensure you're not consuming the energy when it is not being required, and you're moving towards the solar panel so that you save the natural resources. Water consumption, the intensity, withdrawal, discharge, again, very important to not just monitor, but also show how you can actually reduce this consumption, which goes back to probably one of the things is like plastic bottles, right? Plastic, we have already seen, it's almost banned in almost every city. The plastic bottles are also getting quite a big, because they take a lot of years or rather do not even decompose, right? For example, back here in UAE, the government have already banned the plastic as well as the bottles, and they have come up with a lot of free water across the city where anyone can go and fill their bottle. So you don't need to carry those plastic bottles. So you as an organization, if you are into a bottling plant, what is your view on that? How we are working towards that and ensuring you're saving the environment? Which eventually comes to the plastic and waste management. Again, waste management, another very intrinsic thing. For example, we are reading like in South Korea, they have come up, they're actually recycling 95% of their food waste. How? Because the government have come up with a stringent policy to ensure everything is being captured in a proper way. So that's where India is also moving towards, right? So you as an organization, what are you doing with your waste? And especially if you're a manufacturing, which is into manufacturing of hazardous waste material, this is very important. So you might have already been doing a lot from an environmental health and safety concern perspective, but probably these needs to be relooked from an ESG perspective. And your EHS manager probably need to have a discussion with your ESG manager. If not, then you should have that. Extended producer responsibilities. Obviously, if you are sourcing, or if you are one of the source vendor to a customer, what is that? How you're sourcing that and selling to your customer? And the complete life cycle assessment of your product, right from the sourcing till it is being sold. For example, in FMCG, if you are putting something in, sourcing something and giving it to their retailer, right from your sourcing till the retailer is being used, you have to look at the complete life cycle and ensuring each touch point, how it is impacting the overall ESG parameter, especially the environmental parameter. From a social perspective, starting from the minimal remuneration, the minimum wage, again, the labor law policy comes here very effective, is whether you are paying the normal minimal wage, especially in manufacturing and labor union intensive organizations, this is very important. And even white collar jobs as well, whether you are not going across of the labor policy and ensuring your employees and staff are being paid well and as per the organization's policy. So you need to have that proper compensation policy in place. Return to work and retention rate, right? So all your leaves, especially the maternity leave, which organization provide, right? That's something which has been seen across, right? Even it's an unwritten rule, female employees are going in maternity leave. Once they come back, they probably go at a lower grade or the salary is reduced or something like that. Those all needs to be removed, and ensuring your policy is covering everything and you are equitable to everyone. Occupational safety and healthy, again, part of your health and safety measures, which also has been case, but again, from a manufacturing perspective, this is very important. When the construction business, how you're taking care of your laborers or those who are on the ground working. Regular trainings to your staff on all these policies. Customer issues, how you're managing your customer issue. For example, if you're a bank, if a customer comes and complains about it, what is the whole journey? Is he being getting the right answer? Into how much time and whether appropriate way or not, and you're taking care of that. Product labeling, that's another important thing. The labels which we get on the product, are they informing the right information? Right now we need to provide almost everything, right from what are the contents of that, where it has been sourced from, how much calories it will have. So everything is that being captured properly and as per the policy. Again, there are a lot of legislations and policy which has already been given by the various ministries, also by the central government, on how do you label these and whether these are all adhering to that or not. Finally, your CSR projects. If you are doing something for the society, who are the beneficiaries for it, right? This is very common. We have seen people do CSR, but it's just on the backyard to save money or to save tax, right? But that's not the case. We need to ensure who are those beneficiaries, which is coming here, giving a proper transparent disclosure to the regulator. And finally, the data privacy issue. Again, taking an example of a bank, and obviously with when we were hearing Abhishek, there were a lot of issues which we have heard about the data breach and all. So how you are ensuring your data privacy is there, your customer data is safe and secure within your organization. And finally, going towards the last pillar, which is the governance issue, is starting right from your anti-bribery and corruption disciplinary and whistleblowing policies to going towards conflict of interest. Very simple, small example of ensuring there is no direct relationship between a board and a management, right? I mean, you don't want a father sitting in the board and son being the CEO. So again, those kind of things, especially from a listed entity perspective, regulator wants to look into. Engagement with key stakeholders, how we are ensuring you are managing and ensuring engaging with all your stakeholders. The anti-corruption and bribery policies, whether you have that clearly highlighted, who's the owner or charter for that, who's the sponsor for that, what if anything happens, how an employee can come and inform and take decisions. The ethical standards, and finally the shareholder rights, which comes now what shareholders can do, going to the performance fee and the board diversity, which is again, I think spoke earlier as well. A female member in the board is one of, again, a mandatory thing. So what's the next step for these 1,000 companies? 3 R's: research, recalibrate, and report. Research on what is your maturity level on the ESG topics. How do you report? How do you identify what is important for you? Recalibrate them, process the data relevant within across the organization, ensuring you have all the data collected and rehash them to see whether you're able to monitor them properly. And then finally, you need to report this in your annual sustainability report, which is a mandatory requirement from 2020 to 2023 year onwards. Moving to my last part, which is our approach. So we as an AGMS, as an organization, have worked a lot, and especially this is something which we have been not just as part of our CSR, if you can say as well, we have been giving a lot of trainings to the board members and purely enroaching them, engulfing them, and ensuring they're aware about ESG, which is the most first and foremost thing. Your board, your senior management needs to be aware, what is this whole topic about? And that's where the base starts from, ensuring they're aware of what is this ESG, what they need to do. And that's where the top-down approach comes, is that they need to take that call is what is important for them. And from there, it eventually trickles down on what you're going to report towards. So we follow a very simple approach on 3 things: assess, design, and implement. Very simple. From an assess perspective, we assess the whole market and regulatory requirement, which is very specific to the organization, to the industry, to specific to the size of the organization, to the place of the organization where it works, and then understand what is that appetite you have overall ESG. It could be an organization working in manufacturing, already have a very good environmental health and safety environment. So they are already working very closely, but they don't have much disclosure towards the governance. For them, that is more important. But then it could be for a service industry, their governance might be pretty good, but then they don't have a proper alignment within the social aspect. So this very important is you need to understand what is important for you as an organization. As I said earlier as well, this does not work like one size fits all. So you as an organization needs to take that call is what is important for you. And that's where we come into picture, is that we make you understand across the whole whiteboard that this is important. And then once you've identified that this is material for you, you go and design the whole framework based on that, which starts right from your framework and what is your ESG framework, what are you going to do? That then becomes a roadmap kind of a thing, is what we need to do as an organization over the next 3 to 5 years. And once I have the roadmap, we identify these are the initiatives which you need to parallel take. These are the projects which you need to undertake. These are the KPIs for this project, and then how you can monitor them. And obviously, all these gets encapsulated into your policy document, which again is one of the mandatory requirement to have an ESG policy and being reviewed by an external assessor. You have that ESG policy, and then that's where you start reporting it on an annual basis. And finally, we close it with implement, which means getting that thing implemented in terms of program management and getting that training across to the necessary stakeholders within the organization who is responsible to take that forward. Very simple approach, obviously, right from starting, as I said, starting from the corporate strategy, it starts going down to what is that ESG thing which you need to look into. obviously there are a lot of inputs which comes from an organization, but the output is finally that report clearly highlighting, which is a very good parlance, and you should be aware of this word, which is materiality analysis, very common term across ESG parlance. Materiality analysis is what is important for you as an organization, what is material for you is being captured in that, and that becomes your assessment of materiality analysis. And out of that, so if you remember, we spoke about 17 SDG goals, or let's say 9 principles. Within those 9 principles, we clearly highlight, look, these are the 5 principles which is material for me or for my organization, and that what you take forward to the next step where you go towards. So again, just kind of a snapshot on what could be important to business and what could be important to stakeholders are not necessarily same. What you as a management, you might think it's important for you to push the product to the customer, as the board might think it's not like just to the customer, but probably I'm looking at more sourcing thing, right? So what is important for you as a management, as a stakeholder, needs to be all aligned to, and that's from where we come across that what is high, what is medium, what is low from an importance perspective, and the medium and high are the one which is being taken forward to. So it's not like the low is being not looked into at all, but that's not something which is on an immediate impact or immediate assessment which needs to be done. Once we have the impact assessment, we go with obviously the detailed approach, which is the development of the policy, as I said. With that happens with your all process on how you go about it. Again, that's not one size fit policy, very much relevant and dependent on the organization. And from that, you have your whole roadmap on what is that you need to work towards over the next 3 to 5 years, and how you're going to create that report which is required for the regulator. And finally, obviously from the implement, where we provide a lot of trainings and ensuring going forward, you can have those all data points consolidated and collected across the organization in a standard manner, so that you can prepare and give it every year eventually, which needs to be done. So what we have done actually, to be precise, as the AGM, is we have automated the whole thing and come up with a tool for this whole thing, where it's more like a plug and play, where you as an organization needs to literally understand what is material for you. So you have got all the framework, the industry topics, whatever industry you are relevant to, you select your industry, you select what is the framework you want to, who are the stakeholders who needs to answer those questions, and then you select basically each stakeholder gets a questionnaire, they actually select, filter, and based on that, everything on the background gets captured. And finally, that overall materiality report comes in, that these are the important material topics for you. Based on that, you can actually then define your metric, define your strategy, set the baseline, set the target as well. Again, for example, water consumption, I want to reduce by 5% or 10% over the next 3 years. Energy consumption, we want to reduce it. Responsible sourcing, we want to ensure there's no human rights wrong in the whole process. So you set those baseline and target within the framework, and then that's being given across to the stakeholder or the key project manager or the responsible guy who's responsible to take that project forward. And in this way, this tool will eventually consolidate everything and support you to create that report which is required, which is a BRSR report which we're talking about. The another tool which we have also worked across, and we are working this with one of the credit bureau, Criff Dun & Bradstreet, where it is very important for you to identify your vendors, especially for larger organizations which work with multiple vendors. It becomes a point of issue, right? So if a question is being asked, what is your overall ESG score or methodology for responsible sourcing, you need to go back and check with your vendor. And if I am working with more than 100,000 or 1 lakh or 2 lakh vendors, it's literally next to impossible on getting the data from every them and collating and then identifying this is my overall net zero, which I as an organization is doing to create this product, right? So for that, we have worked with Dun & Bradstreet, and we have come up with a beautiful tool which is scattered across 35 industries, very focused towards industry, and created that framework where you can give that questionnaire to your vendor. He needs to self-assess themselves. The vendor needs to self-assess based on their sector or industry which they are focused towards, and that's being benchmarked against those the companies within that industry. benchmark against the legal and regulatory requirements. For example, very simple, like trade license. I mean, is the trade license valid or not? So we have that tool inbuilt, which is being linked with the central government to see whether that trade license is valid or not. To going to the overall core questions and this industry specific questions, doing all those local regulations check whether you are aligning with the local requirement. And again, these all are very, very India specific. So we have gone across and looked into more than 1500 regulations and legislations across the country, across various states and cities, state government, and then have pushed across this, that if you are a manufacturing industry working somewhere out of Vizag in Andhra Pradesh, what is that laws or regulation you need to adhere to, and is my vendor adhering to that or not? If you are someone working within Rajasthan, is it adhering to Rajasthan government, and obviously the central government as well. So we have gone to that level of detail in the backyard and ensure all those local regulations are being captured across. Business information is being captured and being validated. And then obviously based on that, the tool gives a score to the vendor, a very simple certificate as well as score, that what is your ESG score compared to obviously of what you have given, plus compared to what your other competitors and the local regulators says. So based on that score, then you as an organization who is working with that vendor will eventually easily come to know on whether, one, should I even work with this vendor, and second, if yes, how much ESG is that which needs to be brought down to your own organization itself. So within this whole tool, we are looking at 5 macro sections, as we said. So the business, obviously starting from the business, what business you are in, going to your environmental, social and governance questions, which is detailed enough, almost in 15 to 20 questions with detailed data validation. And finally, the most important, the industry specific questions, industry specific legislations and laws, which is mandated and required within India, are being put forward to see that that organization is adhering to them. If yes, if no, and if yes, to what extent, and obviously with all detailed answers. And this does not take more than 2 hours for a vendor to fill, but if they get this, there's a lot which they can do from this. So these are the industry which we have actually captured, which literally covers almost everything which is required for any industry, or every industry is literally, to be precise, covered. We have gone to that detailed of specifically a legislation, which is, if there is anything for that particular industry. Like for example, utilities itself, we have got 3 different sectors for energy, water and waste, just clearly to highlight these are so huge and different set of regulations and legislations for each of them. Obviously just this flow, how from if you're head of a supply chain, or if your client is the head of a supply chain, all they need to do is ask the suppliers to fill this questionnaire. The supplier will get the invitation, they'll get this score, and they'll get the certificate, and you as an organization will eventually get the complete dashboard on how your vendors are performing against each other and how you should integrate that in your overall ESG report. What is the support for the supply chain or the supplier? Obviously, as a head of supply chain within the organization, you come to the complete assessment, the complete digital solution to ensure everything is there, and obviously your reporting, you would need this. And as a supplier, you do your own assessment, you actually fill the questionnaire of your own, that's a self-assessment, and you get a certificate from one of the leading credit rating agencies, which will eventually help you to work more and get more business from with the help of this. Again, as we said, we have done those automatic checks and as well as the analyst check at the background, so that ensuring whatever the self-assessment is being done is aligned to this. That's the dashboard which I was talking about, which you as an organization who's working with so many vendors will get, and you can easily do the vendor sourcing and scoring for your organization. So overall, in a nutshell, if I can need to summarize it, is a 3M, which we call it, or M3 technology: material, measure, and monitor. ESG, if you want to highlight and summarize things, material, what is material for you? What is important for you? Identify that topic. Measure it. Identify the ways to measure those important topics. And then over the next year, monitor it, so that again, the next year you can report it in the way it is being required by the regulator. With this, thank you so much. Happy to have the questions. Sorry. Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, sure. Akash.
Yeah. So, any member, any question if they want to ask from Vivek, sir? Any questions from any member? Okay, Vivek sir, do we have any, for this compliance, we have so many returns for the this thing, CSR activities and all that, and from the government point of view. So, do we need to take any additional, what say, any extra care कि हमको क्या क्या approach किस तरीके से approach करना चाहिए,
For
for the
ESG?
compliance, right? For ESG, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's why I'm saying, Akash. So for CSR, you had a very set of key. Where are we actually using those funds, and are we using those funds into betterment of the society or not, right?
Right.
ESG is not just about that. So that's why I said the first and foremost point is to identify what is important for you as an organization. So the GRI framework gives 17 goals, Indian framework gives 9 goals. So you need to understand within each what is important for you as an organization, right? For example, child labor might not be applicable for services, right?
Right, sir, right.
So you need to first understand what is important for you as an organization. Once you have that understanding, then you need to take that forward as that, look, we as an organization believe these are the 5 topics which is important for us as an organization, as a board. And then you take that 5 topic forward as this is what we are going to do across these 5 topics. This is my KPI, this is my initiative, and this is how I'm going to monitor and report it to the regulator.
Oh, right.
Yeah, I think there was some question someone have just asked in the chat is what is DEI? I believe it's on the chart. So DEI is
It's from the chart.
Diversity, inclusion, diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is more towards the gender diversity and the caste diversity across the organization.
Any more questions from any members? I think there are no questions. So we have, so now moving to, I mean, we have just, towards the, on the verge of the ending this session. And at the last, I would like to say thanks to Vivek sir and the Vivek sir for, giving us their precious time for the CIRC. And this was the topic which was really, not usual topic for us. And also, sir, आपने जो insight दिया है, मतलब related to the other things, how ESG should work and मतलब किस तरीके से हमको methodology लेनी चाहिए, and about your organization, what your आप लोग का क्या approach है, definitely हमारे members उससे सीखे होंगे. And also I request if you can just share your this PPT with us, so that we'll post this PPT on our website. So any members किसी भी तरीके से कोई problem होगी, so they can access their PPTs. And on the behalf of CIRC, I would like to thank Vivek sir and the Abhishek sir for giving their precious time. Thank you sir. And हम आपसे टाइम लेते रहेंगे सर. तो थोड़ा सा हो सकता है मेंबर्स की ऑक्यूपेंसी नहीं रही because of that, because of the income tax return, because major जो chartered accountants है, they are like occupied in their returns. And also मेरे ऑफिस में भी बहुत लोग वेट कर रहे हैं कि the moment I get free and मैं अपना returns करूँ. And thank you very much sir for your precious time, sir.
Thank you so much, Akash. Thank you so much, and thank you for the Central Education Council for inviting us. Definitely, the PPT will be shared, and your members can get back to us. Completely understand, right? I mean, the time which we have and income tax filing. But believe me, ESG का भी वैसे ही होने वाला है अगले साल. आप CS के पास ही आने वाला है कि भैया मेरी सस्टेनेबिलिटी रिपोर्ट बना के दो.
Definitely, sir.
Right? That's because हर ऑर्गेनाइजेशन को वो चाहिए. So it's a
Right.
mandated. So with your annual report, you need to disclose your sustainability report also.
Sustainability report also. Right.
So वहाँ पे सारे वो आएंगे. So that's why it was important. Happy to have any further discussion or anything which you believe we can be help on. We're always here.
Definitely, sir.
Thank you so much for having me here.
Thank you, sir. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Abhishek, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Should we close?
Yeah.